Hello and welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to a new edition of the Daily Debate. In tonight's show, we're going to be taking a look on the two-day conference that was held by Dar al-Ifta', the 7th International Conference on Fatwas and the Sustainable Development Goals. We're going to be taking a look at this two-day conference that just concluded today. We're going to be looking at the prospects, the topics on the agenda of the conference and the outcomes of such an important one. But before we start doing that, let's check out some of the stories making the news today. And we'll start off with President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi, who met with a group of Egyptian investors and businessmen from various industrial sectors today. In the attendance of Prime Minister Mustafa Madbouli, the acting governor of the central bank, and the ministers of electricity, renewable energy, petroleum and mineral resources, planning and economic development, finance and the environment, housing, utilities, urban communities, commerce and industry. The President expressed the state's keenness to continue direct cooperation with investors and businessmen with the aim of supporting the state's drive to achieve comprehensive development. The remark was made during an open dialogue by the President with a group of the Egyptian investors and businessmen working in these different industrial sectors. The head of state said the state seeks a balanced partnership with businessmen which is oriented to support the economy and localize the industry. He further confirmed that Egypt needs every effort of its sons in the development drive. The President asserted that encouraging investments and tackling concerns of national investors in a decisive way are parts of the state's strategy, in light of their effective contributions to the GDP and employment rates, as well as their administrative and organizational abilities. The presidential spokesman Bassam Radi said President al-Sisi reviewed the facilities and reform measures adopted by the government to remove obstacles impeding the private sector, including a developed infrastructure, notably in harbors, ports, roads and modern transportation means, together with improvements in customs and taxes and in relative legal systems. And Prime Minister Mustafa Madbouli today met with Bahrain's ambassador to Egypt, Hisham al-Ghudair, whose mandate in Egypt came to an end. Madbouli extended thanks to the ambassador for his efforts to consolidate bilateral relations between Cairo and Manama during his years-long mission in Egypt. For his part, al-Ghudair thanked the Prime Minister and his government for supporting him during his work in Egypt. The Prime Minister asserted the willingness to continue enhancing Egyptian-Bahraini relations and to build on the current boost in friendship ties between President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi and King Hamad bin Isa al-Khalifa of Bahrain, with the aim of benefiting their peoples. And the 7th Global Conference of Egypt's al-Ifta' Authority concluded today. A number of sessions and workshops took place ahead of the closing session with the participation of international delegations. Tuesday's meetings discussed the role of fatwas in treating development obstacles and backing national economy. The event witnessed the launch of a number of international initiatives, including a fatwa charter to face climate change. It also witnessed handing the Imam Khafeef Prize to Singapore's Mufti and the Ifta' Institution in Singapore. Speaking at the inaugural session on Monday, Minister of Endowments Mohammed said religion is concerned with making and building life and with construction drives. The conference was held under the umbrella of the General Secretariat of the Ifta' Authorities worldwide and under President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi's sponsorship. The theme of this year's event was Fatwas and Sustainable Development Goals. The conference was attended by high-level representatives from the UN and the WHO, along with scholars, ministers and religious leaders from 90 countries. The discussions aimed at linking construction and cultivation on earth with Islamic religion's high ends. These were some of the stories making the news today, but now turning our attention to tonight's topic. Now, the Dar al-Ifta conference studied the Sustainable Development Goals ahead of the COP27 conference that is to be taking place next month in Sharm el-Sheikh. Let's check out this report and we'll be right back.
Under the auspices of His Excellency President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi and with the participation of a high-level delegation from both the United Nations and the World Health Organization, along with muftis, ministers, scholars, intellectuals and media figures from 91 countries, Egypt's Dar al-Ifta held its 7th International Conference on Fatwa and Sustainable Development Goals. The two-day conference, which wraps its activities on Wednesday, took place under the umbrella of the General Secretariat for Fatwa Authorities worldwide. The conference is considered a crucial step in studying sustainable development in light of Egypt's hosting of the United Nations Climate Change Conference COP27 next month in the Red Sea resort city of Sharm el-Sheikh, and how far fatwa is linked with climate change issues, in addition to social, environmental and economic dimensions, as well as the best use of available resources to meet individuals' needs amid climate change repercussions in which the whole world is facing that should be faced and dealt with properly. The conference's discussions focused on linking between living on earth and achieving Islamic legislation's targets. And the conference displayed a documentary film that featured religion's aims, including worship of Almighty Allah, self-behaving, stressing that development and reconstruction is a legislative target in Islam as a religion, which has been mentioned in the Holy Quran. It also reiterated that sustainability is part and parcel of development in Islamic legislation. The inaugural session was attended by the Mufti of the Republic and President of the General Secretariat for Fatwa Authorities worldwide, Dr. Shaui Alem, and Ministers of Religious Endowments, Dr. Mukhtar Goma, on behalf of the Prime Minister Mustafa Madbouli. Through its sessions, workshops and discussions, as well as scientific research, the conference agenda included a number of crucial axes that discussed the role played by fatwa in reigning in poverty and realizing prosperity for all nations. The conference also tackled means of raising people's awareness towards environment and climate change issues, plus the relationship between fatwa and sustainable development and ongoing efforts which contribute in protecting the climate and confronting obstacles hindering development, as well as enhancing the national economy. Meanwhile, the conference centered on three main axes, including the role played by fatwa in achieving sustainable development targets, dealing with and confronting obstacles through suggesting a number of issues, and supporting the national economy. In this respect, the conference reviewed a number of important issues, like the importance of consolidating the nation and Islam's vision, as well as the role played by fatwa in encouraging and pushing forward the national economy.
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, and we're delighted to be joined here in the studio by Mr. Mohammed Khafeef, the Islamic researcher. Mr. Khafeef, thank you very much for joining us tonight.
Thank you very much for having me.
Mr. Khafeef, before we start talking about the 7th International Conference of Dar al-Ifta on the Fatwa and Sustainable Developments, for our viewers who do not know, can you please shed light on basically the definition of fatwas and the resources and the pillars where fatwas are derived from?
The expression fatwa has invaded the English language in recent years, but not many people know exactly what it means. The closest definition of fatwa is jurisprudential counsel. By jurisprudence, we talk about the religious doctrine and religion's do's and don'ts in general, putting it in a simple way. But fatwa is not a consultancy activity. Its decrees are mandatory, and it is obligatory to all Muslims to follow the fatwas that are issued by mainly bodies of very highly qualified and experienced scholars. So when we say fatwa, we say in English jurisprudential council. It is a little bit difficult expression, but people need to know where it comes from. Okay. Now the word Sharia has invaded the English language as well. Still, many people don't know exactly what it means. Sharia is very simply and very strictly the do's and don'ts of Islam. Those do's and don'ts are dictated from several sources in a certain hierarchy. The main source of Sharia is the Holy Quran, of course. Next comes the Sunnah of Prophet Muhammad ﷺ and his sayings, the Hadith. After that, if we don't find our objective in one of those two, then we go to analogy. Analogy where a new event or a new concept arises, which is somewhat similar to an existing one. So the two events are compared, and a fatwa is derived from that analogy. In case there is no analogy available, we go to the consensus of the scholars, because Prophet Muhammad ﷺ is not with us anymore. So the qualified scholars convene and decide by consensus on a fatwa or a council concerning certain issues. Last but not least, if all those are not available, the ruler, who is supposed to be a qualified Muslim scholar as well as being a ruler, may have the right to decide for himself based on his experience and his religious background to issue a fatwa, which is usually very rare, because the previous four sources do cover almost 99% of what's happening in the world today.
Yes. Well, the Dar al-Ifta held the 7th International Conference on Fatwas and Sustainable Development Goals. Now, Egypt is on its way to achieving the Sustainable Development Goals slated for 2030. And religion, as reiterated during the conference, is really responsible for making and building and constructing lives, decent lives, and not with death or destruction. So it has a role to play in achieving the Sustainable Development Goals. Now, before we start talking about the topics being discussed in the conference, how important and significant is it holding such an international, important conference that includes 90 countries right before the COP27 conference that will be taking place in Sharm el-Sheikh dealing with climate change?
Well, if we look at the global situation today, two concepts arise very clearly: sustainable development and climate change.
Yes.
Well, in order to have sustainable development, you have to have a sustainable society, sustainable community, and so forth. So this sustainability should emerge from several sources.
Yes.
Let's take them step by step. Basically, you have to have sustainable sources of raw materials, sustainable sources of qualified workers and personnel.
Yes.
Sustainable processing equipment and processing policies. Then sustainable markets and sustainable supply chains. And finally, sustainable customers. Okay, all this chain is governed by very simple rules of Islam and very broad framework of Islam. When God Almighty decreed that man would be created, he was to be created to rule the earth in his name and to make it prosper. Okay, this is one issue. The other issue is for those humans to worship him. Part of this worship is ruling the earth in his name and making it prosper. So the concept is in Islam since the beginning of life. Not today, not the last century or not the previous decade.
Yes.
Actually, now we are discovering what Islam has said about it hundreds of thousands of years ago. So when the fatwa body starts addressing this issue, actually it is addressing an issue that has been there all the time, but it did not have the sufficient focus and the sufficient attention, because we were living in a world where we expected everything to continue to be safe, everything continued to be available and abundant, but things have changed. So when things change, we look for the basics and the fundamental principles that rule our lives and our societies. In Muslim societies and communities, of course, the ruling bodies are the fatwa bodies, who derive their decisions and decrees from the 5 sources that we have talked about before.
Yes. Well, then the fatwa has many different dimensions, be it a social dimension, economic dimension, and an environmental dimension, as you've mentioned. So let's focus on the environmental dimension. How or what do the fatwas say and sort of refer to in terms of environmentally dimension and environmentally friendly that would basically spill over the combating climate change and having sustainable natural resources and really trying to save the environment?
Well, in the Holy Quran there is the word fasad. Fasad means
corruption.
Corruption in a direct way, but means deviation from what's right in a general sense. So one of the verses of the Holy Quran addresses this issue very clearly. Damage or corruption has appeared on land and in the seas due to men's doing. So this is a fair warning and a very direct warning. People of the earth, whoever your belief is, remember, what you are doing can either raise the levels of mankind's life or bring it down. This is one of the very straightforward verses of the Holy Quran. Prophet Muhammad ﷺ, in his hadith, has given us a framework of how to deal with the environment, how to respect any plant, how to protect species of life, how to deal with water. There are lots of hadith by Prophet Muhammad ﷺ of how to conserve water and how to protect from wasting it, and how to use it to its best effect. Because now the scientists tell us that there is a very definite amount of water on this planet. It will not increase, it will not decrease. So we either use it properly, or we are wasting our lives while wasting it. Okay. Now, if we talk about the environment as a social issue, it is very closely related to charity. Okay. If we talk about hunger, if we talk about cold, heat, all the factors that affect the human body are all addressed in the charity section of Islam. A Muslim cannot be considered a Muslim if he spends the night satisfied and well fed, knowing that his neighbor is hungry. This is saying Prophet Muhammad ﷺ. Dozens of ayahs in the Holy Quran address feeding the poor and clothing them and giving them shelter.
Yes.
This is from a social perspective. We come now to a sensitive issue, which is the political perspective. If the ruling bodies of the world do not have the sufficient awareness and the sufficient will to bring about the protection of the environment, everything else will fall apart. Because this is the top of the pyramid.
Yes.
The top of the pyramid is the political will of rulers, but the fundamental and basic requirement is the awareness of every single individual, and this is what Islam does. Islam instructs the ruler to do his duty as a ruler, and instructs the ruled to how to do their role in protecting the environment, protecting their lives, and sustaining the development of their countries.
Yes. Then how can Dar al-Ifta and the international fatwa institutions all around the world actually, as you've mentioned, raise the awareness of the society, raise the awareness of the citizens to be economically efficient with the natural resources they have, the trees, the water scarcity that the whole world is suffering from, and energy scarcity as well, and turning into renewable energy? How can the Dar al-Ifta and the fatwa institutions raise the awareness of the societies?
Actually, this is not the role of the fatwa bodies alone. This is what we call in management a cross-cutting activity. The fatwa scholars should sit down with people who understand in agriculture,
Yes.
who understand in the environment, who are very well aware of the minerals of the earth, or the energy sources, and how they are created, and how they are produced, and how they are wasting the environment. There has to be some kind of council that addresses those issues both from the religious side and from the scientific worldly side, because now everybody has Google.
Yes.
So, and everybody can address and study any issue that affects the environment or the sustainable development. So unless those bodies converge together and create a policy or a framework of activities that raises the awareness of the individuals on various levels, let's say on various age brackets and on various scientific levels and so forth, it will be very difficult for the fatwa bodies to do that alone.
Yes. Well, Mr. Khafeef, now you've mentioned that the religion in general and Dar al-Ifta as well, they do have a role for supporting the economic dimension of life. Now, how can the fatwas and Dar al-Ifta, the international fatwa institutions, help overcome the obstacles that the whole world is going through, the economic obstacles? I mean, the whole world is going through economic crises, energy crises. You've mentioned the role that religion actually does help with the workers, the labor market, the unemployment levels, getting them down. How can the fatwa play a crucial role in overcoming these obstacles and supporting the Egyptian national economy, for instance?
Let me give you an example about what fatwa can do about such an issue. In certain countries, not to mention names, when the price of a certain crop drops, farmers are instructed to cultivate this crop in only over half the arable area, okay, in order to keep the price high. This is totally forbidden in Islam. This is what we call monopoly. Okay, such policies and such decisions created by greed and created by the will of profit in any way, are things that are very frowned upon in Islam and very severely punished, either both in this world and in the coming world.
Yes.
So fatwas have to address the basic instincts of man, because when you create a good person, then you create a good community, then you create a prosperous community.
Yes.
So the fatwa people, or the fatwa bodies, should also, how to say, cooperate together, so that there will be some certain consistency between among the decrees they issue, and that should be spread all over the world. And of course, the world does not have any lack of media sources or media outlets that can produce huge impact on the awareness of people regarding the sustainable development and the environment.
Yes. Well, this is the 7th international conference. Now, what would you say is, I mean, the big role that the General Secretariat of the fatwas and institutions around the world has achieved so far during those 6 conferences and up until the 7th one? And they're not only limited to the conferences, but the impact and the important role it plays in developing the human lives and the whole world as we are going through different crises and obstacles globally.
Well, there is some kind of cause and effect to this. For some time, as I told you, we were living in a dream or in an illusion that everything was fine. So the fatwa bodies were, okay, please be good, be nice, be generous, be fair, be just. But the more the situation becomes critical and difficult, the more there is the need for direct and strict and cumulative effort in order to address certain issues directly and very clearly. We need that now.
Yes.
Maybe we haven't needed it before. So the fatwa bodies were not very keen on doing so much as it needs now.
Yes. Well, ladies and gentlemen, the Mufti of the Republic as well said that the Dar al-Ifta supports Egypt's Vision 2030 to achieve sustainable development. Check out this report and we'll be right back.
Egypt's Grand Mufti and President of the General Secretariat for Fatwa Authorities Worldwide, Dr. Shawi Alem, addressed the 7th edition of Dar al-Ifta International Conference on Fatwa and Sustainable Development Goals. In his speech, Dr. Alem stressed Dar al-Ifta in Egypt is fully merging with the Egyptian National Project for Sustainable Development, not only with words and statements, adding that Egypt's new vision for sustainable development is a civilized human vision in the first stage that seeks human development. Further affirmed that Dar al-Ifta aims to clarify the role played by fatwa in achieving social and cultural dimensions of sustainable development, expressing the seriousness of houses and institutions of Ifta worldwide towards national causes, and reiterating that brightened aspects in various domains in the nation reflect the right path of Egypt Vision 2030. Dr. Alam hailed quick steps in the state, which he said increases Egyptian aspirations towards a bright future. He also noted efforts exerted by Dar al-Ifta and the General Secretariat as well as Peace Center, which are considered a national participation in supporting sustainable development. On terrorism, Dr. Alam confirmed it is an integrated destructive project that aims to undermine any development projects. He reiterated the General Secretariat consolidates the development orientation in Egypt and all Islamic states, and stressed sustainability is a part and parcel of the development concept in Islamic legislation.
back, ladies and gentlemen, and we continue our discussion with Mr. Khafeef. Now, this conference also deals, the fatwas, with the social and cultural dimensions of the societies. Now, you've mentioned to me before that there is a big part of religion and fatwas that work on securing the human rights, rights for women, rights for youth and children. Now, in a time when this is one of the main sustainable development goals by the United Nations, how can the fatwas, international institutions and Dar al-Ifta raise the awareness and secure the rights of women and youth during such a critical time?
Well, fatwas do have a very important role in this field. First of all, women's rights have been guaranteed a very long time ago by Islam. Unfortunately, the framework for those rights was neglected for some time, and women were considered at a certain phase in our history as second-grade citizens, if this can apply. But the time has come now that we rediscover how Islam protects women's rights. And there is a very thin line, but an important line, between safeguarding women's rights and chaos, and social chaos. In Islam, the fundamental building block of society is the family,
yes,
not the individual. So the family is the shell that protects its components, man, wife, children, and so forth, and which builds the whole community. So every single party to this unit should be very aware of his duties and his rights. So men do have rights, whom nobody talks about nowadays. Anyway, this is off the record.
That's another episode.
Another episode. But men have rights and have obligations. Okay, women do have rights and have obligations. Those rights and obligations should not come in conflict with each other. Men's rights and women's rights should not conflict with each other. Obligations, again, should not. If every party is aware of his and her obligations and rights, then life will prosper.
Yes.
If every single party takes the matter as a competition or as how do you call it, as a conflict again, then the individual will be destroyed, the family will be destroyed, consequently a community will be destroyed. Freedoms in Islam are very clear and very specific, but there are limits, because freedom without consequence and without accountability is chaos.
Yes.
This is agreed upon by Islam and all philosophers. It goes without saying. So when we enter the phase where everybody wants to take every right from everybody, then we are headed downhill, definitely. Fatwas should be clear and consistent and fair, and in the meanwhile go hand in hand with what's going on in society, in technology, in medicine, in education, and all that. So again, the fatwa people should address this issue as right, obligation, consequences, not an issue of rights alone. Because if we talk about rights alone, some sides may think that the whole issue is that we don't have our rights. Okay, where are your obligations? Okay, Are you really aware of the consequences of forfeiting your rights or forfeiting your obligations? This is a very important issue that the fatwa people should address to people and make them aware of. Okay?
Well, Mr. Khafeef, the whole world is going through a high pace of development and technological progress. So how can Dar al-Ifta, or the House of Ifta and Fatwas, keep up with the pace of such a developing and technologically fast world?
Well, I think this is a mixed blessing. Because, as you said, technology and science in general is developing at very fast paces.
Yes.
This is an effort that the fatwa people have to exert in order to keep up with that. In the meanwhile, all those developments can help the fatwa people in spreading the awareness and making even people in the midst of the desert aware of what is required of them and what their rights are. So we can summarize all those developments into the development of the means, but the concepts are the same. Okay. A person can talk badly to another person in person.
Yes.
He can do it on the phone. He can do it on Zoom. Okay? The means have changed, but the principle is don't talk bad to other people. So the fatwa people should take advantage of all those developments rather than feel them as burdens.
Yes.
And I think now that the technology and the development of programs and software and so forth can have become so user-friendly that many people can use them even if they are not specialists or if they are not specialists in their field. So fatwa people can use them, scientists of course can use them, students can use them, women can use them, but the point is how will we use them?
Yes.
Okay?
Well, it is said that extremism and terrorism is one way of really spreading quickly the chaos within communities. Now, Egypt has been dealing and combating such extremist ideas and ideologies and terrorism, and Egypt went through its own religious discourse. So there are some challenges that Egypt and the whole world are facing from misleading fatwas. How can Dar al-Ifta really combat these misleading fatwas, also using the technological progress that you've mentioned?
Well, you talk now about extremists and so forth. They were, unfortunately, they were very good at using and utilizing those technological means. It remains now for the good guys, for the good side, to use them as well, or even better.
Yes.
Okay, and let us remember that the problems we are facing are not all out of the blue. There are certain entities and certain sides that do not wish us well, and they wish to destroy what we are having and what we are doing, so that they can become to replace what good is going on now. So this is an issue that relates to the law, relates to security, relates to social habits and social tendencies, and again and again and again to prosperity or level of lifestyle. Because when you go to very poor areas, you will find that the poverty of people is usurped by those extremist entities. If you go to the very highly rich, you will find people that have so much money that they don't know what to do with it. So usually, when you have money that you don't know how to use, you use them badly. So again, this is the building of the individual and the building of the family and the building of education. Education is a huge requirement that we need to address and very quickly, very quickly, because even very highly developed countries are now developing their own educational systems. So how about us?
Yes.
The educational systems now are, I'm sorry to say, are lagging behind in many aspects, even in technology. Now certain students are getting laptops and so forth. This is very late. This is very late. The home. Even everybody knows that habits gained from the age of 2 to 5 never go away.
Yes.
Okay. So when you let's talk about now the social. We go back to the social side. When the father and the mother are both too busy trying to provide financial support for the family, forgetting the social and the behavioral effort they have to exert with the children, even especially the very young ones, then there is a discrepancy in the balance. There is an imbalance between the financial support and the behavioral and bringing up support. This is a dangerous issue, even at that very small age. Notwithstanding in a later stages, after all those habits are embedded, God help them to try to fix them again.
Yes, well, talking about trying to fix now, one final question, Mr. Khafeef. What would you say are the main obstacles that the international fatwa institutions and the Dar al-Ifta are facing at such a critical time and a critical age where the whole world is suffering from different crises, be it political, social, or economic obstacles and crises?
Well, so I have to say that not all the crises we are facing have come out of the blue again. There are political ambitions, economic ambitions. Of course, politics is the child of economics. So all those ambitions sometimes surpass the limit of fairness and the limit of justice. And and that's how problems arise. I do not need to relate to you how this is happening all over the world now, everywhere. Again, it boils down to trying to learn why we are here in the first place.
Yes.
I have created man to worship me and to make the earth prosper. Okay, and to rule the earth in my name. To rule the earth in my name means applying the principles that I have sent to you through the prophets and through the scholars and so forth, that will guarantee that you live a proper life, that will lead to a better and more prosperous life afterwards.
Yes. Well, ladies and gentlemen, leading a proper life, that is one of the main goals that such a conference held by Dar al-Ifta with the Fatwa International Institutions that took actually place yesterday and concluded today, and hopefully achieving a lot of progress, at least up until the COP27 conference that will be taking place next month in Sharm el-Sheikh. Unfortunately, that's all the time we have for this edition of the Daily Debate. But before we go, I'd like to thank my distinguished guest, Mr. Mohammed Khafeef, the Islamic researcher and scholar. Mr. Khafeef, thank you very much for joining us this evening. Thank you very much, sir. Ladies and gentlemen, please stay tuned for more coming up on Nada International. I'm Hani Saif. Thank you for joining us.